4 augments were released with Jade Shadow's Constellations, augmenting Temple, Koumei, Dante and Nokko. I'll go through them in that order, almost indisputably from best to worst. Fans of Nokko, this might not be the video for you. I'm TheKengineer, let's solve a practical problem. Did you catch the announcement of TennoVIP in London, UK, coming up October 2nd? I'll be there too, and it'll be great to see you there. If you're across the pond and it's a journey too far, you can still join up on Patreon to support the channel and increase the odds I can join you all at TennoCon 2027. For now, let's check out some augments. As usual, they're available from the core syndicate shops or traded from other players. Temple has gained Rhythm Guard. It's a very simple augment, almost exactly as written. You gain Overguard when you cast an ability, innate or subsumed, on their backbeat. It starts at 100 Overguard and doubles with each on-beat cast up to 1600 per cast. The Overguard total caps at 12,800, equal to 8 capped casts, providing both a healthy layer of hit points and on-demand damage gating, plus a side of status immunity. The mod says the bonus resets if the beat is missed, but more accurately, it resets if you cast off-beat. Skipping any number of beats without casting won't ruin the Overguard scaling. There's no stat to scale on this augment. Strength doesn't affect it, nor range, duration, or efficiency. Take a look at whatever temple build you're using, and if you think they could do with some active defense added in, you slot in this augment over the least valuable mod in your build. Like in the no helmet build I shared in the original temple guide, we can swap out adaptation for Rhythm Guard. This does away with a basic and kinda weak health tank for a more enduring and more active Overguard tank. No fuss, no difficult interactions, you rock hard for Overguard. This one really is that simple. Next up, we have Koumei's second augment, Kumihimo Loading. Getting kills with the passive boosted weapon, which cycles randomly between primary, secondary and melee, will grant you loaded dice for Koumei's first ability. While the mod card says 6 kills required, this is unusually scaled with efficiency. By having a high efficiency, you can bring this down to just 2 kills needed per loaded die. Once you have the desired number of loaded dice, you can hold cast Kumihimo to forcibly roll 6s on those loaded dice. This will consume all stored dice up to the cap of 5 you can store, so it can't carry over to subsequent casts. As normal with Kumihimo, 3 or more 6s on the dice empowers the ability, delivering all possible status procs with each hit, rather than a single one, atop the higher damage or even maximized damage roll. This can lead to solid damage and exceptionally easy status output. With a strength of 300%, relatively easily achieved on Koumei, a fully loaded Kumihimo has a damage roll of 2,250 per thread, combined with the rainbow of status effects. It's not a nuke, but it's far more reliable than the baseline ability, tickling with a single status per thread normally. Kumihimo Loading shares its trigger with Koumei's other augment, Omakuji's Fortune. As a result, these two are very well suited to being used together, granting you both a rapid reduction in cooldown on Omakuji and frequent empowered casts of Kumihimo. But that's not all. In the same update that gave us this new Koumei augment, we got Arcane Sculptor. Arcane Sculptor locks your efficiency at 175% for 12 seconds after creating an object with an ability. Creating an object is a bit of a nebulous condition, but it so happens that Kumihimo is one such ability. So by casting it, you get 175% efficiency, making all your abilities very cheap to cast, including repeat casts of Kumihimo. Going for a double augment setup like this then, we've got a setup here that invokes high strength, good range and duration, dumping efficiency because we know we'll get it back from Sculptor. As both augments rely on rotating weapon kills, I strongly recommend having independent killers in each slot, especially weapons that make use of condition overload type effects. Arcane Impetus, despite its efficiency bonus being ignored while Sculptor is active, still provides yet another strength bonus that Koumei can easily work with. Also, that efficiency is still useful while Sculptor is inactive if you've let the buff drop while focused on a more pressing threat. For a tanky approach, we can include the Mecha set and a Mecha suitable companion. With this 3 mod swap, we change our aura, lose Blind Rage, and trade Rolling Guard for Archon Vitality. I'm not too concerned with the additional heat procs, so much as having double the health to work alongside the burst of armor Mecha Pulse will provide. Koumei's affinity for an absurd number of status procs synergizes amazingly with the Mecha set here. The loss in strength isn't all that rough, for longer missions especially, as decrees will more than pick up the slack eventually. but the first build is better for short missions where decrees can't be relied upon as much. Overall, Kumihimo loading doesn't have an insane impact. In my original guide, Kumihimo was much more of a disposable ability, while this augment makes it at least effective enough to stay in the kit. If the trigger didn't line up with Omakuji's fortune, I'd be less inclined to spend the mod slot on it though. Effective, not game changing. Next up, Dante's augment for his Noctua, Noctua Swarm. As stated on the mod, alternate fire gains an additional feature. Not only does it send out the wave of damage, triggering some tome mods, but also it creates a swarm zone around the point of impact. This will continuously damage enemies inside the zone, silence them, and generate energy from them. Unfortunately, this is a very limited augment. The duration of the zone is pretty decent, at a base 15 seconds, scaling with your duration stat. However, the radius of the zone is fixed at only 8 meters. For affecting enemies, specifically silencing them, that's really not a lot. Many targets you'd want silenced, like Xmas and Acolytes, will also be unrestricted from just walking out of the zone. Also, you can only have one zone active at a time, meaning you'll always have very low coverage even if you recharge the ult fire quickly. As for the damage, ignore the visual effect. It's a base 500 per second per enemy with a slash proc guaranteed. In combination with Final Verse Tragedy, this may be able to generate a dangerous amount of damage to enemies, but is otherwise very forgettable. At 500 per second, it takes 5 seconds for the zone to deal as much damage and slash as a single cast of Dark Verse does, meaning 10 seconds to match a simple 3-3-4 Dark Verse into Tragedy combo. Okay, so the offense options are limited. What about buffing? It comes with an energy gain of 2 per second per enemy. This is a fixed value, unaffected by enemy type or casting stats. This energy is given to human allies, so long as each recipient is within range of the swarm zone. Not the 8 meter zone itself, but within an invisible additional range of 25 meters, scaled with Dante's range stat. For comparison, this is the same range that Trinity's Energy Vampire grants energy, albeit much, much weaker. If the enemies leave the zone by any means, including dying, this also means you cease to receive the energy over time being generated. So enemies must survive or be missed by the ult fire, be inside the silencing zone and stay there, then not die from the damage of the swarm, all to give you 2 energy per second per enemy encircled so long as you're within range. This is on the same Noctua with the pre-existing 1 energy per second per enemy hit by ult fire when equipped with Zata Invocation. Zata Invocation lasts for 20 seconds, even if the target dies, has no range limitation, and can be stacked with repeat casts to the max of 10 energy per second. All the while, it takes a tome mod slot, not a Warframe mod slot. In practical application then, the augment can be a way to emergency silence enemies as Dante, if you can also convince the silence enemy to stay inside of a very small zone, and it can be a bonus to energy income if you don't mind leaving a group of enemies alive in a nearby spot. You can't even use a feature like Vazarin's Vortex to group enemies harmlessly in the zone. While ragdolled by the Vortex, the zone doesn't strike them and energy isn't generated. I doubt that this is intended and may get fixed, but for now it's just incompatible. Between the low payout, fixed zone size and layers of limitations, this is not a particularly useful augment for Dante. You will largely get better results from the Xeneric focus school, allowing energy regen, bonus strength, and enemy denial via slowing effects. Or use Noctua, as it already exists, with Zata for energy, Vone for strength, and damage otherwise for the most permanent silencing effect of them all, death. Spending a mod slot on this augment is a hard sell for me. Which brings us to the last and arguably worst augment of the entire set, Nokko's Reroot Rampage. Reroot is Nokko's slippery evasive form, turning into a Sprodling to hop, skip and waddle away from unsuspecting enemies. While in that form, oversized spores pop into existence that Nokko can touch for a speed boost. Reroot Rampage adds a second feature to those spores. Touching one will create another Sprodling which follows Nokko indefinitely. Once near to an enemy, the Sprodling breaks off to jump slowly on the enemy's head, dealing scaling damage to them with each jump. You might think this is similar to Nokko's fourth, Spore Spring, and indeed the similarities are there. Damage and crit scaling with each bounce, AoE damage being applied, and a certain inevitability underscored by randomness in the effect. Unfortunately, I cannot tell if this is just bad or outright bugged. The ability card calls out a damage stat, explosion damage, explosion radius, max bounces, and critical chance per bounce. The damage stat is how much damage it does with each bounce to the main target, and this damage scales up with each bounce. Unlike Spore Spring, which multiplies the base damage by 1.5 with every bounce, Reroot Rampage multiplies it by the number of bounces raised to the power of 1.2. At first, this is faster scaling than Spore Spring, albeit with far lower base damage, but by the 7th hit, the multiplier is lower than if the Spore Spring skinning was used. By the 9th hit, Spore Spring skinning applied to Reroot Rampage would have applied more damage total, and it only grows from there. For a target that somehow lives to the 20th bounce, the Reroot Rampage scaling makes the total base damage just 5% of what the Spore Spring skinning would do. But overlooking a different skinning equation for a moment, there's also that explosion damage. It doesn't exist. There is no separate damage hit that's 7 times stronger. Despite testing and watching for effects on kill or expiry, no such damage occurs. Further still, the explosion radius is not being applied. While the ability card says 8 meters and scales with range, practical testing shows the AoE of the normal damage is only about 7 meters, unmodified by range, and with damage fall off to nothing over distance. The AoE portion is nearly non-existent. The max bounces and critical chance scaling is correct at least. Also, unlike Spore Spring, each Sprodling will only focus on one target for all of its bounces. If the target dies, the Sprodling vanishes rather than carry that scaling to another target. They only latch onto close enemies, take a moment to latch and begin bouncing, deal low damage at first with a gentle scaling, lack the power of any real AoE, and each Sprodling requires you to actively hunt spores in Reroot form, getting one at a time. But I'm not done yet. This augment deals guaranteed toxin procs on each hit, but it does not trigger Archon continuity for corrosive procs too. Despite Arcane Crepuscular working on Spore Spring, it'll only grant strength to Reroot Rampage, not its 3 times critical damage, losing 60 to 70% of the potential damage there. Various other buffs don't apply, including Summoner's Wrath, Tenacious Bond, or Emerald Archon Shards. The speed at which bounces are applied is inconsistent, with one test applying 20 bounces in 14.2 seconds, yet another on an identical enemy took 18.7 seconds from first to last hit. And to seal the deal, the Sprodlings you spawn are not undetectable by enemies. Despite your form going unbothered and keeping enemies unaware of you, the spawn Sprodlings will alert enemies and cause them to open fire. While this might be a useful distraction in some cases, it can impede stealth in others on this otherwise stealthy ability. With all the damage, range and reliability Nokko has from Spore Spring already, Reroot Rampage really is not it. I cannot tell if this is bad or just bugged. With unused stats especially, I feel like the design of this augment didn't reach the game somehow, because in its current state, it is a downgrade for basically everyone. Temple's augment is simple, synergistic, and provides value Temple didn't already have. Koumei's augment, while not overly impactful, connects with another augment and enhances what she can do. Dante's augment is restricted in multiple ways, giving only niche utility, a hard cost to justify in most builds. And Nokko's augment needs to be returned to the kitchen. Sorry chef, this one's undercooked. I hope this breakdown gives you what you're looking for to see the value in these augments, however big or small that is. Much of the testing for this happened live on stream, the link for which is below this video. That's all from me for now, so as always, tank backbeats, use dice cheats, and fight well, Tenno.